At 7:18 on a rainy Thursday evening, Nora Bennett arrived at the Harbor House restaurant expecting a quiet dinner with her fiancé, only to find him sitting beside a woman she had never seen before, and a sealed envelope placed between them like a verdict waiting to be delivered. Daniel Cross barely looked up when Nora approached the table, and instead of explaining why he had canceled their wedding venue that morning, he calmly told her that he had accepted a position overseas and intended to start a new life with someone whose ambitions fit better with his own, leaving Nora staring at the envelope containing the apartment lease, her engagement ring, and a handwritten note saying he had already moved his belongings out. Nora could have screamed, demanded answers, or begged him to reconsider, but something inside her simply went quiet as she removed the ring and placed it beside the envelope, then walked through the rain without looking back while Daniel continued talking, as though he were ending a business contract instead of a 4-year relationship. By the time she reached the tiny apartment she had shared with him, she discovered that the locks had been changed, her belongings had been packed into cardboard boxes, and the wedding savings account she had trusted him to manage contained barely enough money for a week of groceries, forcing her to spend the night in the back room of the community clinic, where she worked as a medical technician. The next morning, Nora's supervisor, Dr. Evelyn Shaw, found her asleep beneath a clinic blanket and quietly offered her a different kind of opportunity after learning what had happened, explaining that an old acquaintance named Adrian Vale needed a temporary rehabilitation coordinator at his secluded estate outside Silver Pine because he had suffered a serious spinal injury and had dismissed several professionals who treated him like a fragile patient instead of a capable adult. Nora initially refused because she wanted nothing to do with wealthy families and private estates, but when she learned the position came with accommodation, a generous salary, and enough time away from the city to rebuild her finances, she accepted the interview before fear could convince her otherwise. 2 days later, Nora arrived at Vale Ridge, a sprawling property surrounded by pine forests and steep mountain roads, where the estate manager, Mrs. Alina Price, greeted her with strict instructions about privacy, schedules, medical records, and the unusual temperament of the man she would be working with. Adrian Vale was 37, once the founder of a rapidly growing engineering company, and now spent most of his days in a wheelchair after a climbing accident 18 months earlier. But what surprised Nora was not his injury, but his refusal to allow anyone to discuss it with sympathy, because he had built an emotional fortress around himself and seemed determined to make every employee leave before they could become another person who eventually abandoned him. During their first week, Adrian deliberately made Nora's job difficult, changing therapy times without warning, refusing assistance when he needed it, and challenging every suggestion she made with sarcastic remarks that would have driven a less patient person away. Yet Nora refused to treat him like a helpless millionaire, and instead told him plainly, "You don't have to like me, and you don't have to trust me today, but if you're going to recover, you do have to stop fighting every person who tries to help you." Her honesty irritated him enough that he finally agreed to follow the rehabilitation schedule, and although neither of them realized it at the time, that argument became the first crack in the wall Adrian had spent more than a year building around himself. Weeks later, Nora discovered something far more troubling than Adrian's difficult personality when she noticed unexplained discrepancies in his company's medical insurance records and several documents being delivered to the estate under the name of Victor Hale, Adrian's chief financial officer. When Nora mentioned the strange paperwork, Adrian initially dismissed it, but after she showed him copies of documents she had accidentally received with his medical files, he contacted an independent attorney and discovered that Victor had been quietly transferring company assets into a separate investment corporation, while convincing the board that Adrian was permanently incapable of managing his own business. The discovery transformed the atmosphere inside Vale Ridge, and Adrian suddenly had to confront the possibility that the people he trusted most had been waiting for him to become vulnerable, so they could take control of everything he had built. Instead of hiding the evidence, Nora helped organize months of financial records, insurance correspondence, board communications, and transaction reports, while Adrian worked with his attorney to establish a legal strategy that would expose the scheme without warning Victor or the other executives who were involved. But Victor was more dangerous than they expected, because he soon realized that someone inside the estate had begun questioning the financial transfers and deliberately planted a false medical report, suggesting that Nora had violated patient care regulations, hoping to have her removed before the investigation reached the board. Nora was devastated when the accusation surfaced, yet Adrian refused to let her face it alone, telling his attorney, "She was the one person who questioned the numbers when everyone else told me not to worry, so if they want to attack her, they're going to have to explain every document she uncovered first." Following week, Adrian made a decision that shocked everyone at the company. Instead of appearing through a video conference, he insisted on attending the emergency board meeting in person, even though he had only recently begun standing with a walker for short periods. Nora did not push him beyond his limits, but she helped him prepare for the difficult day. And when the elevator doors opened at headquarters, the executives who expected to see a defeated man watched Adrian enter the conference room on his own feet, slowly and carefully, carrying a folder filled with evidence that could dismantle the entire scheme. Victor attempted to regain control by accusing Nora of manipulating Adrian and claiming the documents were meaningless without expert verification. But Adrian's attorney immediately presented authenticated banking records, signed authorization forms, and communications proving that Victor had redirected millions in company assets while exploiting Adrian's medical condition. The board voted unanimously to suspend Victor and the executives who had assisted him. The fraudulent transfers were challenged through legal channels. And Nora's name was completely cleared when investigators confirmed that the accusation against her had been deliberately manufactured to obstruct the investigation. After the meeting, Adrian did not celebrate because he understood that recovering his company was only one part of rebuilding his life, and he told Nora that for the first time since his accident, he no longer wanted his future to revolve around proving everyone wrong. Nora understood exactly what he meant because she had spent months measuring her own worth against the rejection she had suffered from Daniel, and together they began focusing on something healthier. Adrian returned gradually to his company as an advisor while Nora enrolled in an advanced rehabilitation program and began planning a small patient support service for people recovering from major injuries. 6 months later, Nora stood in front of a newly renovated community rehabilitation center carrying a brass key that Adrian had given her, not as a romantic gesture or repayment, but as a symbol that the facility they had helped establish would provide affordable rehabilitation services to patients who could not afford private care. Adrian had made remarkable progress as well, walking short distances without assistance and returning to the mountains for the first time since his accident, while Nora finally understood that the life she had thought was destroyed that rainy evening had actually been making room for something she could never have planned. Daniel eventually sent Nora a message asking whether she would meet him for coffee because he wanted to explain why he had left, but she deleted it without responding because she no longer needed an apology from someone who had taught her, unintentionally, that losing a person could sometimes mean finding the courage to stop losing yourself. Standing outside the rehabilitation center at sunset, Nora watched patients leave with their families, heard Adrian laughing with the physical therapy team inside, and realized that neither of them had returned to the people they once were, because sometimes the strongest form of healing is not getting your old life back, but building a better one from everything that survived. Please subscribe to our channel and share this video with your friends and family. We create entertaining and inspiring stories for our viewers, and your support helps us continue making great content for you.